Zyros, a planet once teeming with life, now stood in desolation. Its skies, once filled with the vibrant hues of distant stars and bustling space traffic, were now cloaked in an eternal twilight, a haunting reminder of the Great Silence. The cities that once towered towards the heavens were now reduced to ruins, skeletal remains of a civilization that had thrived and then vanished. The wind howled through the empty streets, carrying the whispers of 1,000 forgotten voices. The very air seemed to hold its breath, as if the planet itself mourned the loss of its inhabitants. Lyra, a scientist from the Viridian race, had been stranded on this forsaken world for years. Her people, known for their intelligence and peaceful nature, had once been part of the coalition that made Zyros a beacon of hope in the galaxy. But now, she was alone, the sole survivor of a catastrophe that had left her world silent. She had come to Zyros to uncover the truth behind the Great Silence, a mystery that had eluded even the most advanced minds of her race. Every day was a struggle, not just for survival, but to maintain her sanity in the face of overwhelming isolation. The days blurred into nights, the nights into weeks, and the weeks into years. Yet, despite the crushing loneliness, Lyra held on to a single thread of hope, the belief that the answers she sought were hidden somewhere on this planet. It was on one of those seemingly endless days that Lyra's routine was shattered. A thunderous roar tore through the skies, a sound she had not heard in years. She looked up to see a ship plummeting towards the planet, trailing smoke and fire. It crashed into the distant mountains, the impact sending tremors through the ground beneath her feet. Curiosity, and a flicker of hope, drove her towards the crash site. Captain Jack Mercer was no stranger to danger. A veteran soldier of countless battles, he had seen more of the galaxy's darkness than he cared to remember. His latest mission had gone horribly wrong, leaving him stranded on a planet he had never intended to visit. As his ship hurtled towards the surface of Zyros, Jack's instincts kicked in. He braced for impact, knowing full well that survival was far from guaranteed. The crash was brutal, the ship tearing through the rocky terrain before coming to a violent stop. Jack emerged from the wreckage, battered but alive. The hostile environment of Zyros was immediately apparent. The air was thick with dust, the ground uneven and treacherous. His military training took over as he quickly assessed his surroundings, searching for any signs of life, any indication that he was not alone. It wasn't long before Jack found what he was looking for. Or rather, who? As he made his way through the rocky terrain, he spotted movement out of the corner of his eye. A figure, slight and graceful, yet moving with purpose. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen, her skin a soft, shimmering hue, her eyes reflecting the dim light of the planet's dying sun. Lyra. Their first encounter was tense. Jack's hand instinctively went to his weapon, while Lyra, despite her peaceful nature, prepared herself for the worst. They sized each other up, Jack, the battle-hardened soldier, and Lyra, the scientist who had known nothing but peace until the Great Silence. The air between them crackled with unspoken questions and unvoiced fears. Neither spoke for what felt like an eternity. It was Lyra who broke the silence, her voice soft but firm. She asked who he was, why he was here. Jack, ever the soldier, kept his answers short, revealing little more than his name and the fact that his mission had gone wrong. He asked her the same, and her response was just as guarded. They were two strangers, both stranded on a planet that had seen the death of civilizations, both wary of the other's intentions. Despite their mutual distrust, it became clear that they needed each other. Zyros was not a place where one could survive alone. Jack's military expertise and Lyra's knowledge of the planet would be their only means of survival. Reluctantly, they agreed to work together, each silently promising to keep a close eye on the other. As they set off to find shelter, their partnership was uneasy, built on necessity rather than trust. The terrain was unforgiving, the dangers of Zyros ever present. Yet, as they walked, a strange understanding began to form between them. They were both survivors, each shaped by their own pasts, each with their own reasons for being on this desolate world. The ruins of Zyros loomed around them, silent witnesses to the beginning of a journey that would take them deeper into the heart of the planet's mysteries. Neither Lyra nor Jack could have known what awaited them, but for now, they had each other, and that was enough. They walked on, two souls bound by fate, heading towards an uncertain future on a planet that had already claimed so many. Surviving on Zyros was no easy task. The planet's harsh landscape was riddled with dangers that tested Lyra and Jack at every turn. The terrain itself seemed designed to break them, with jagged cliffs and deep chasms that forced them to take treacherous paths. The weather was equally unforgiving, scorching heat during the day, freezing cold at night. Every step was a challenge, every breath a reminder of how far they were from the safety of their own worlds. The first test of their uneasy alliance came quickly. A pack of feral creatures, remnants of the once thriving ecosystem, attacked them as they sought shelter in the ruins of a collapsed building. These creatures were unlike anything Jack had ever encountered, vicious, relentless, and nearly impervious to the weapons he had salvaged from his wrecked ship. It was Lyra's quick thinking and knowledge of the planet's flora that saved them. She identified a nearby plant with toxic properties, using it to create a makeshift barrier that drove the creatures away. For the first time, Jack saw the value in her expertise, and a seed of trust was planted. But trust was slow to grow. Jack's instincts as a soldier made him wary, and Lyra's natural caution as a scientist kept her guarded. Yet, the more they faced together, the more they began to rely on each other. There were moments when Jack's strength and combat skills saved them from immediate danger, and others when Lyra's intellect and deep understanding of Zyros revealed paths to safety that Jack would have overlooked. Their skills, so different yet complementary, became the foundation of their survival. As they navigated the ruins, they began to find remnants of the advanced technology that once made Zyros a beacon of progress in the galaxy. Strange devices, still humming with residual energy, lay buried beneath the rubble. Some were clearly tools of communication, others seemed designed for purposes they couldn't immediately understand. But each discovery brought them closer to the truth of what had happened on this forsaken planet. It was during one of these explorations that they found an ancient control center, its systems still partially functional. Lyra worked tirelessly to interface with the alien technology, her eyes wide with fascination and fear as she uncovered data logs from the final days of Zyros. Jack stood guard, his senses alert to the dangers lurking in the shadows, yet he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease as Lyra delved deeper into the planet's past. The logs painted a grim picture. The Great Silence, as it had come to be known, was not the result of a natural disaster, but a deliberate act. The inhabitants of Zyros had discovered something, a force, a weapon, capable of manipulating the very fabric of reality. This power, they realized too late, was far beyond their control. In a desperate bid to contain it, they had unleashed a weapon that wiped out all life on the planet, sealing away the dangerous knowledge they had uncovered. As Lyra and Jack pieced together these clues, the true gravity of their situation became clear. The planet's abandonment had not been a simple evacuation. It was an act of desperation, a last-ditch effort to hide a terrible secret from the rest of the galaxy. Jack's military mind immediately recognized the implications. Such a weapon, if it fell into the wrong hands, could shift the balance of power in the galaxy, perhaps even destroy it. Their search led them deeper into the ruins, where the remnants of the ancient civilization became increasingly alien and incomprehensible. But Lyra's determination to uncover the truth only grew stronger. She believed that understanding the past was the key to their survival and perhaps even to preventing a similar catastrophe in the future. And then they found it. Buried deep beneath the planet's surface, in a cavern untouched by time, was the artifact. It was a device unlike anything either of them had ever seen, an intricate structure of swirling energy contained within a crystalline shell, pulsating with a power that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she realized what they had uncovered. This was the source of the Great Silence, the weapon that had brought an entire planet to its knees. For a moment neither of them spoke, the gravity of their discovery hanging heavy in the air. Jack could feel the weight of his responsibility pressing down on him. This was no ordinary find, it was a turning point, not just in their own survival, but in the fate of the entire galaxy. The power to control reality itself was now within their reach, or, more terrifyingly, within the reach of anyone who might find them. The artifact pulsed with a steady, almost hypnotic rhythm, its energy rippling through the air like a heartbeat. Lyra's eyes remained fixed on it, her mind racing to piece together the fragments of knowledge she had gathered. This was no ordinary device. It was the culmination of an ancient civilization's desperate attempt to protect the galaxy from an unimaginable threat. The species that created it had long since vanished, but their legacy, this artifact, remained. It was designed to manipulate reality itself, a power so immense that it could reshape worlds, alter time, and bend the very fabric of existence. But with that power came danger, a danger so great that its creators had chosen to wipe themselves from existence rather than let it fall into the wrong hands. Lyra explained all of this to Jack, her voice tinged with a mix of awe and fear. The artifact was a double-edged sword, a tool of protection that could just as easily become a weapon of mass destruction. Its purpose had been noble, to safeguard the galaxy from an unknown threat, but its potential for catastrophe was limitless. If misused, it could tear apart the very reality it was meant to preserve. The knowledge of its existence was a burden, one that could not be taken lightly. As Lyra spoke, Jack's expression grew increasingly conflicted. He had known, from the moment he laid eyes on the artifact, that it was something far beyond anything he had encountered before. But now, with Lyra's explanation, the full weight of his mission pressed down on him. His crash landing on Zyros had not been an accident. He had been sent by a covert human organization with one purpose: to find and secure the artifact for humanity. They had known of its existence for years, tracking down ancient legends and piecing together clues, until finally, Jack had been dispatched to retrieve it. The revelation hung heavy in the air, a silent wedge driven between them. Lyra's eyes, once filled with trust, now reflected suspicion and betrayal. Jack had never intended to deceive her, but his duty had always been clear. The artifact, in the hands of humanity, could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. It could be the key to ensuring their survival in a universe filled with hostile forces. But at what cost? Jack's mind raced, torn between his loyalty to his mission and the undeniable truth Lyra had laid bare. The artifact was too dangerous, its power too unpredictable. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could spell the end of everything they had fought to protect. Yet his orders were clear: secure the artifact, bring it back to Earth. The conflict within him grew, a storm of duty versus morality, survival versus destruction. Lyra, sensing the turmoil within Jack, pleaded with him to see reason. The artifact, she argued, was not a tool to be wielded by any one species. Its power was too great, too dangerous. It had already destroyed one civilization; they could not allow it to destroy another. Her voice, usually so calm and measured, now carried an urgency born of fear and desperation. She didn't want to believe that Jack, the man she had come to trust, would choose power over the safety of the galaxy. Jack's silence spoke volumes. He understood the gravity of the situation, the stakes of the choice before him. But years of training, of loyalty to his people, had ingrained in him a sense of duty that was hard to shake. Yet, as he looked into Lyra's eyes, saw the fear and hope reflected there, he knew that this decision was not just about duty. It was about doing what was right, even if it meant defying everything he had been taught to believe. The bond between them, forged through hardship and survival, was now being tested in the most profound way. They had come to rely on each other, to trust each other, in a world where trust was a rare commodity. That bond was now the only thing keeping them from turning on one another. Jack could see it in Lyra's eyes, the plea not just to save the galaxy, but to stay true to the man she believed he was. The decision weighed heavily on Jack, every moment stretching into an eternity. He knew what was at stake, understood the implications of both choices. He could follow orders, take the artifact back to humanity, and possibly change the course of history. Or he could defy his mission, destroy the artifact, and prevent the possibility of untold destruction. In the end, it was not duty that guided his hand, but the trust he had built with Lyra. He saw in her a reflection of the values he had once held dear: honor, integrity, the desire to protect rather than destroy. Those values had been buried beneath layers of military conditioning, but they had never truly been extinguished. And now, in this moment of truth, they resurfaced. Jack took a deep breath, his voice steady as he spoke. They would destroy the artifact. It was too dangerous, too unpredictable. The risk to the galaxy was too great. Lyra's relief was palpable, her gratitude unspoken but clear in her eyes. They had made the decision together, a decision that would not just save them, but possibly the entire galaxy. The tension between them eased, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. They would see this through, destroy the artifact, and ensure that its power could never be used for harm. It was a choice that would define them both, not just as individuals, but as partners bound by a common cause. Together, they would face whatever came next, united by the knowledge that they had chosen the path of righteousness, even when it was the hardest path to take. The silence that had settled over Zyros was shattered by the sudden arrival of a ship cutting through the atmosphere. Jack's heart sank as he recognized the markings. These were no ordinary scavengers. The rogue mercenaries that descended upon the planet were battle-hardened, ruthless, and led by men Jack had once called comrades. They had been tracking him for weeks, drawn by the same intelligence that had led him to Zyros. But their motives were far darker. Unlike Jack, they had no intention of safeguarding the artifact. They saw it as a tool, a means to exert control over the galaxy, and they were willing to do whatever it took to claim it. The confrontation was immediate and brutal. Jack and Lyra barely had time to take cover before the first shots were fired. The mercenaries moved with deadly precision, their objective clear: neutralize any opposition and seize the artifact. Jack's instincts kicked in, honed by years of combat. He returned fire, his focus sharp, his every move calculated. But these were no ordinary foes. They knew his tactics, anticipated his strategies, and countered with a ferocity that left little room for error. Lyra, though a scientist, proved to be a formidable ally. Using her knowledge of the planet's terrain and its remaining technology, she orchestrated traps and diversions, slowing down the mercenaries' advance. But the odds were against them. The mercenaries were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. The battle raged on, a chaotic blur of gunfire, explosions, and desperate maneuvers. Each second brought them closer to defeat, the artifact slipping further out of their grasp. Amid the chaos, a particularly vicious exchange left Lyra exposed. She had been working to disable a device that the mercenaries had brought with them, a device designed to contain and transport the artifact. In her haste, she didn't see the mercenary taking aim from the shadows. Jack did, but he was too far away to reach her in time. His shout of warning came too late. The shot rang out, and Lyra crumpled to the ground, clutching her side as blood seeped through her fingers. The sight of Lyra falling was like a knife to Jack's heart. Everything else, the battle, the artifact, his mission, faded into the background. In that moment, nothing mattered but reaching her, saving her. He fought his way through the mercenaries with a fury born of desperation, his thoughts a whirlwind of guilt and fear. Lyra had trusted him, relied on him, and now she was paying the price for it. When he finally reached her, the situation was dire. Lyra's wound was severe, her breathing shallow. She looked up at Jack, her eyes filled with pain but also determination. "The artifact," she whispered, barely able to speak. But Jack shook his head, refusing to leave her side. He could see the mercenaries closing in, their goal within reach, but his mind was made up. The artifact was powerful, yes, but it was not worth more than Lyra's life. Not to him. The ultimate choice lay before him, stark and unforgiving. He could leave Lyra, complete his mission, and secure the artifact for humanity. It was what he had been trained to do, what he had come to Zyros to achieve. But in doing so, he would lose the one person who had come to mean more to him than the mission itself. Or he could sacrifice the artifact, destroy it, and save Lyra, knowing that he might be dooming the galaxy to a future without the safeguard the artifact represented. The decision was excruciating, but in the end, it wasn't a choice at all. Jack knew what he had to do. He gently lifted Lyra, cradling her in his arms, and with a determined expression, set his sights on the artifact. The mercenaries, seeing his intent, redoubled their efforts to stop him, but Jack was unstoppable. He fought with the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose, pushing through the pain and exhaustion until he reached the artifact's core. With one final, desperate move, Jack activated the artifact's self-destruct mechanism. The device, designed by its creators as a last resort, began to pulse with an intense, blinding light. The mercenaries, realizing too late what was happening, tried to flee, but the artifact's energy was already building to a catastrophic release. Jack held Lyra close as the ground beneath them began to shake, the planet reacting to the immense power being unleashed. The air crackled with energy, the very fabric of reality warping around them. But Jack felt no fear, only a profound sense of peace. He had made his choice, and he would see it through. The artifact exploded in a brilliant flash, its energy consuming everything in its path. The planet trembled as the shockwave rippled outward, causing the very structure of Zyros to begin collapsing in on itself. But amidst the chaos, Jack and Lyra were enveloped in a cocoon of light, a final gift from the artifact's creators, ensuring their survival even as the world around them crumbled. As the light faded and the dust settled, the planet lay in ruins, the artifact and the mercenaries gone. Jack, still holding Lyra, looked around at the desolate landscape. The battle was over, and they had won, but the cost had been high. The artifact, with all its potential, was gone, but so too was the threat it posed. Jack had chosen love and life over power, and in doing so, he had not only saved Lyra but perhaps the galaxy as well. The ground trembled beneath their feet as Zyros began to collapse, the aftermath of the artifact's destruction rippling through the planet's core. The sky, once a dull gray, now burned with fiery streaks as the atmosphere ignited. Massive fissures tore open the earth, swallowing the ancient ruins that had stood for millennia. The very air hummed with the energy unleashed by the artifact, its power destabilizing the planet's structure. Jack's grip tightened around Lyra as he carried her through the crumbling landscape, every step a race against time. Their escape was a desperate scramble, navigating the treacherous terrain that shifted and buckled beneath them. The path ahead was littered with debris, and each second brought new dangers. Explosions erupted around them, sending shockwaves that nearly knocked them off their feet. But Jack pressed on, driven by sheer determination. He could feel Lyra's breath, shallow but steady, against his chest, a reminder of why he could not afford to fail. Every ounce of his focus was on getting them to safety, away from the chaos that threatened to consume them. They reached a narrow canyon, the walls closing in on either side. It was their only route to the surface, but the ground beneath them was unstable, threatening to give way at any moment. As they pushed forward, a massive rock slide cascaded from above, forcing Jack to dodge and weave through the falling debris. His muscles screamed in protest, but he refused to stop. Lyra's life depended on him, and he wouldn't let her down. The canyon led them to a cliff overlooking what remained of the planet's surface. Far below, Jack could see the remnants of his crashed ship, damaged, but potentially still functional. It was their only chance. Summoning every last bit of strength, Jack began the treacherous descent, carefully navigating the jagged rocks that jutted out from the cliff face. The ship loomed closer with each step, a beacon of hope in a landscape torn apart by destruction. As they reached the bottom, another tremor shook the ground, nearly throwing them off balance. The ship was within reach, but the planet's imminent collapse made every second feel like an eternity. Jack could see the energy waves rippling across the horizon, tearing apart everything in their path. Time was running out. He reached the ship's entrance, slamming his hand against the control panel to open the hatch. The door groaned, barely responsive, but it gave way. Jack quickly secured Lyra inside, then rushed to the cockpit. The controls sparked to life, flickering as the ship's systems struggled to power up. He could feel the vibrations intensify as the planet's core destabilized further, the ground beginning to fracture beneath them. With a roar, the ship's engines fired up. Jack gripped the controls, pulling back hard as the ship lifted off the ground. The moment they left the surface, the planet beneath them began to implode, the landscape collapsing into itself. The ship accelerated, racing through the atmosphere as the destruction below reached its zenith. With one final push, they broke through the planet's gravitational pull, soaring into the safety of space as Zyros disintegrated behind them. As the ship stabilized, Jack finally allowed himself a moment to breathe. The silence of space was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. He glanced back at Lyra, who was resting in a medical pod, her wounds now stabilized. Relief washed over him, but it was tempered by the weight of everything they had just endured. As the adrenaline subsided, Jack found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The choices he had made, the lives they had lost, each decision had led them to this moment. The mission that had begun as a covert operation to secure a powerful artifact had transformed into something far greater. Along the way, he had found something unexpected, a bond with someone who had started as a stranger but had become much more. Lyra's unwavering belief in doing what was right had challenged Jack's own understanding of duty and loyalty. Together, they had faced impossible odds, and together they had survived. In the quiet of the ship, Lyra stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at Jack, her gaze filled with gratitude and something more profound, a shared understanding of what they had accomplished. The artifact was gone, and with it, the threat it posed. But their mission was far from over. The galaxy was still out there, unaware of the dangers that had been averted, the sacrifices that had been made. Jack approached her, his expression softened by the trials they had endured. "We made it," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of their journey. Lyra nodded, her strength returning, though her eyes remained solemn. "But it's not over, is it?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fatigue. "No," Jack replied. "It's just beginning." The realization settled between them. They were no longer just a soldier and a scientist, no longer bound by the roles they had once played. They were partners, united by a common goal, to ensure that the mistakes of the past were not repeated. The destruction of the artifact had prevented one disaster, but it had also opened their eyes to the fragile balance that held the galaxy together. They could not return to their old lives, not after what they had seen, not after what they had done. As they set a course away from Zyros, leaving the ruins of the planet behind, they both knew that their journey would take them down a new path. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to protect the galaxy from the threats that lurked in the shadows. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape.